Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a single discovery, right? Something that just completely revolutionized medicine, saved countless lives, and totally changed how we even think about being sick. We're talking about antibiotics, those microscopic marvels that are just, well, fundamental to modern healthcare now. But like any really powerful tool, they've got a complex story behind them. Some surprising twists, definitely, and a growing challenge that honestly impacts every single one of us.
Indeed, yeah. Antibiotics really are one of humanity's biggest medical wins.
Right.
But their widespread use, it's also revealed this profound evolutionary challenge. So in this deep dive, we'll explore not just, what they are and where they came from, but also the critical issues really shaping their future, especially this rising threat of resistance.
And you've shared some absolutely incredible source material with us, a really comprehensive look at these vital meds. So our mission today, let's pull out the most important nuggets, give you those aha moments, and leave you feeling well-informed on a topic that literally, well, it touches all of us. Let's dive in. All right, so to start our deep dive, at its core, what exactly is an antibiotic? Like, what makes it different from other medicines? And what does that name even mean? Antibiotic.
Right. An antibiotic is a type of antimicrobial substance, and it's specifically designed to fight bacteria. So it can either kill them outright or just stop them from growing. And it's really crucial to understand they are not effective against viruses, like the ones causing the common cold or the flu.
Okay, yeah, that's a big one people get wrong.
Definitely. And they don't work against fungi either, so specific to bacteria.
When I think of antibiotics, I usually picture like labs and 20th century medicine, white coats maybe, but our source material. Now, it reveals this truly ancient history. Tell us about that astonishing discovery up in northern Sudan.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. There's evidence from ancient Sudanese societies dating back as early as 350, 550 CE, who appear to have been systematically consuming antibiotics, like on purpose.
Systematically? How do we know that?
Well, chemical analyses of Nubian skeletons showed really consistent high levels of tetracycline. That's an antibiotic we still use today.
Wow. Tetracycline. So how did they get it?
Researchers believe they were brewing these beverages from grain fermented with the specific bacterium called Streptomyces. And this bacterium, it naturally produces tetracycline.
That quote from George R. Melagos just really sticks with you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Given the amount of tetracycline there, they had to know what they were doing. That ancient insight is just incredible. So, okay, how did the term antibiotic itself come about? How did it evolve to describe these things?
Well, the term antibiosis was actually introduced first way back in 1877 by Jean-Paul Villemin. It basically meant against life.
Yeah.
He used it to describe that phenomenon where one microorganism stops another one from growing.
Okay, like one microbe fighting another.
Exactly. Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch, for instance, they observed this with an airborne bacillus that inhibited Bacillus anthracis, the anthrax bacterium. But the modern term antibiotic, as we use it, that was only coined by an American microbiologist, Selman Waksman, in 1947. He defined it more specifically as a substance produced by a microorganism that actively fights against the growth of other microorganisms.
Okay, produced by microbes to fight other microbes.
That was the original definition, though today the usage is broader. It includes synthetic antibacterial compounds, too, the ones made in labs.
Okay, so from those ancient brews, let's jump forward quite a bit, to the dawn of modern antibiotic chemotherapy. Who were the key figures, the pioneers we should know about, who really set the stage for this modern revolution?
Yeah, the scientific groundwork really started in Germany with Paul Ehrlich back in the late 1880s. He had this idea of magic bullets chemicals that could selectively kill bacteria without, harming human cells.
Magic bullets, I like that. Did he find any?
He did. His work led to arsphenamine, which was also known as salvarsan, in 1907, and that was the first synthetic antibacterial compound. Then later, Gerhard Domack led the team that developed Prontosil. That came out in 1932 or 1933. And Prontosil was really important because it was the first antibacterial drug that worked systemically, meaning throughout the entire body.
Okay, so progress was definitely being made. And then the big one, the accidental discovery that really changed everything, Alexander Fleming and penicillin. Everyone's heard the name, right? But can you elaborate a bit? What was the journey from that initial kind of messy observation to penicillin becoming this widespread, life-saving drug?
Right, the famous story. Fleming, back in 1928, observed that a Penicillium rubens mold, well, it had contaminated one of his bacterial culture plates.
Just left out by accident, wasn't it?
Apparently so, and he noticed it inhibited the bacterial growth around it. So he deduced the mold must be secreting some kind of antibacterial substance. He named it penicillin.
But that wasn't the end of the story.
No, not at all. Fleming discovered it, but the real game changer was the work of Ernst Chain, Howard Florey, and Edward Abraham. They were the ones who managed to actually purify penicillin G back in 1942, and that made it possible to produce it on a large scale and make it widely available.
Purification was key.
Absolutely. And that purification work, alongside Fleming's initial discovery, earned them all a shared Nobel Prize in 1945. We should also mention René Dubos. He also made really significant contributions by pioneering systematic searches for natural antibiotics, and he discovered tyrothricin in 1939.
So, okay, bringing this into the present day, how are antibiotics typically prescribed? How are they used in modern medicine right now?
Well, they're primarily used to treat or prevent bacterial infections, sometimes protozoan ones too, but mostly bacterial. Now, if the specific bug causing an infection isn't known, doctors often start with what's called empiric therapy.
Empiric, meaning based on experience, or best guess?
Exactly. They use a broad-spectrum antibiotic, one that targets a wide range of bacteria, just to get treatment started quickly. But once the pathogen is identified, if possible, they try to switch to definitive therapy. That uses a more targeted, narrow-spectrum antibiotic.
Makes sense. More specific is better, presumably.
Generally, yes. Less impact on your good bacteria. They're also prescribed preventively sometimes for certain at-risk populations.
Like who?
People with weakened immune systems, maybe cancer patients undergoing chemo or before certain surgeries, even some dental procedures, actually, to prevent a heart infection called infective endocarditis in people at high risk.
Right. And how do we actually, take it? How do we get these medications into our bodies? What are the common ways?
There are various routes. The most common is usually just by mouth, pills or liquids. For less severe infections, for more serious cases, they can be given intravenously, like through an IV drip or by injection.
Okay, for faster or more direct delivery.
Right. And then there's topical application. Creams, ointments, eye drops, ear drops for infections on accessible sites, like skin infections, acne, cellulitis, eye or ear infections.
And is topical better sometimes?
It can be. It allows for a really high local concentration of the drug right where it's needed, which can reduce the amount spreading through your whole body.
Yep.
So potentially fewer systemic side effects. But getting the exact dose right can sometimes be tricky with topicals. And you can still get local skin reactions like irritation or allergies.
Okay. Looking at the bigger picture then, what stands out to you about how antibiotics are consumed globally? You mentioned that source material.
Yeah, the variation is just immense. Global consumption rates are incredibly wide-ranging. For instance, a 2018 WHO report showed Mongolia had the highest consumption rate, something like 64.4 defined daily doses per 1,000 people per day.
Wow, that sounds like a lot.
It is. And contrast that with Burundi, which had the lowest rate at just 4.4.
Huge difference. What does that tell us?
It really points to significant disparities, doesn't it? Disparities in access to healthcare, diagnostic capabilities, how well antibiotic use is managed, these antibiotic stewardship programs. Generally, higher consumption often correlates with higher rates of resistance, which is the big worry. But very low consumption might mean people aren't getting antibiotics even when they desperately need them. It's complex.
Okay, so antibiotics are powerful tools, but that power, it can come with side effects, right? Let's unpack some of the common ones and maybe where things get a bit more complicated.
Absolutely. While they're generally considered safe and obviously life-saving when used correctly, side effects can definitely range from mild to quite severe. Some common ones, especially with oral antibiotics, include things like diarrhea.
Yeah, I think many people have experienced that. Why does that happen?
It's often because the antibiotic disrupts the natural balance of your gut bacteria, the microbiome. It kills off some of the good guys along with the bad guys. And this disruption can sometimes allow harmful bacteria, like Clostridioides difficile or C. diff, to overgrow.
C. diff.
Yeah.
That's the one that causes really bad gut issues, right?
Exactly. It can be very serious. Some people take probiotics alongside antibiotics to try and prevent this, though the evidence is mixed. Antibiotics can also affect the vaginal flora, sometimes leading to yeast overgrowth, yeast infections.
Okay. Any more serious ones people should be aware of?
Well, yes. Some specific antibiotics, like a class called quinolones, if they're taken along with systemic corticosteroids, which are strong anti-inflammatory drugs, there's a risk of tendon damage, like Achilles tendon rupture.
Wow, okay. That's serious.
It is, yeah. It's a known risk factor.
So here's a really common question I know people have. Do antibiotics mess with birth control pills? Is that a real thing?
Yes, that question comes up a lot. The good news is the vast majority of studies indicate that most common antibiotics generally do not significantly interfere with birth control pills.
Really? Because you hear it all the time.
I know. The actual failure rate seems to be very low, maybe around 1%, similar to the baseline failure rate of the pill itself. However, there are a couple of exceptions, or potential exceptions.
Like what?
Some broad-spectrum antibiotics, particularly one called rifampicin, which is used for things like tuberculosis.
Yeah.
It is known to increase liver enzyme activity, and that could potentially lead to a faster breakdown of the pill's active hormones, making it less effective.
Okay, so rifampicin is a definite one to watch out for.
Yes, and there have also been suggestions, though the evidence is pretty inconclusive, that major disruption to gut bacteria might theoretically affect how the pill is absorbed. So often clinicians might still recommend using backup contraception, like condoms, just to be safe, especially if there are other patient-specific risk factors that might reduce the pill's efficacy.
Okay, better safe than sorry sometimes, maybe. What about alcohol? That's another common mix people wonder about. Can you drink alcohol while on antibiotics?
Right. For many common antibiotics, moderate alcohol consumption is unlikely to cause major problems or interfere with the drug.
Okay, so maybe a glass of wine is okay with some.
Probably, with many of them. But, and this is a big but, there are specific types of antibiotics where mixing them with alcohol can cause really serious, unpleasant side effects.
Which ones are those?
The main ones to know are metronidazole, tinidazole, often used for certain bacterial or parasitic infections, and some types of cephalosporins. If you drink alcohol while taking these, you can get something called a disulfiram-like reaction.
Disulfiram-like. What does that feel like?
It feels awful. Severe nausea, vomiting, flushing, headache, shortness of breath. It's basically the reaction that the drug disulfiram causes in people trying to quit alcohol. Really unpleasant.
Definitely something to avoid then.
Absolutely. And beyond that reaction, alcohol can also just reduce the effectiveness of certain other antibiotics like doxycycline and erythromycin. It might make them less good at actually fighting the infection.
So, bottom line, probably best to check with your doctor or pharmacist about your specific antibiotic and alcohol?
Always the best advice.
Yeah. Okay, thinking beyond these direct drug interactions, is there a more fundamental way, maybe almost a hidden way, that antibiotics can impact our own human cells?
That's a really interesting question. And yes, there is some evidence for that. Some antibiotics can actually cause damage to mitochondria.
Mitochondria,
Yeah.
the powerhouses of the cell, right, from
Yeah.
biology class.
Exactly. Those are the organelles inside our cells that generate energy. And what's fascinating is that mitochondria are actually thought to have evolved from bacteria themselves billions of years ago.
Whoa. So antibiotics targeting bacteria might accidentally hit our mitochondria too.
Precisely, because mitochondria still retains some bacteria-like features. This mitochondrial damage can cause something called oxidative stress within our cells. And it's actually been suggested as a possible mechanism behind some of the side effects seen with certain antibiotics, especially the fluoroquinolines we mentioned earlier, the ones linked to tendon issues.
That's fascinating. So it's like a kind of friendly fire at the cellular level.
You could sort of think of it like that, yeah. It's an area of ongoing research.
Okay. We've talked about the incredible power, the history, the personal effects. But now we absolutely have to address the most critical issue, the elephant in the room, antibiotic resistance. What exactly is it? And why is it considered such a monumental global threat right now?
Right. Antimicrobial resistance, or HAMR, it's actually a naturally occurring process. Microbes, including bacteria, naturally evolve ways to survive the drugs we designed to kill them. It's evolution 101.
Okay, so it's natural, but
the crisis comes because this natural process is being massively, dangerously accelerated by the misuse and overuse of antimicrobials. By us. The World Health Organization isn't mincing words here. They classify AMR as a widespread, serious threat, and they say it is happening right now in every region of the world.
Serious threat. How serious are we talking?
We're talking incredibly serious. AMR is estimated to be responsible for nearly 5 million deaths globally each year.
5 million?
Yes. And within that, about 1.27 million deaths in 2019 were directly attributable to drug-resistant infections that would have been treatable before.
That's staggering. It's like a silent pandemic.
It essentially is a silent pandemic that's already well underway.
Okay, wow. So how does this resistance actually develop? Like, what's happening at the bacterial level that lets them just shrug off these drugs? How do they behave this way?
Well, it really comes down to those fundamental evolutionary processes we talked about. When we use antibiotics, we're basically creating intense selection pressure. The antibiotic kills off the susceptible bacteria, right? But if there are any bacteria in the population that happen to have some mechanism to survive, maybe a random mutation.
They get left behind.
Exactly. They survive and then they multiply. So the treatment eventually selects for the resistant strains, allowing them to take over.
So it can just be random mutations that help them.
That's one way. Inheritable genetic mutations can confer resistance. But what's often even more significant and faster is something called horizontal gene transfer.
Horizontal gene transfer, what's that?
It's basically bacteria sharing genetic information directly with each other. They don't have to wait for inheritance down generations.
Like passing notes in class?
Kind of like that, yeah. But the notes contain survival instructions. They often exchange these resistance genes on small, mobile pieces of DNA called plasmids.
So they can just give the resistance blueprint to their neighbors.
Pretty much. And that allows resistance to spread incredibly quickly through a bacterial population, even between different species of bacteria sometimes.
And that's why drugs that used to work great, like penicillin or erythromycin, are now much less effective against many infections.
That's a huge part of it, yes. Their widespread use over decades has selected for and spread these resistance mechanisms. And now we're seeing the rise of truly frightening superbugs.
Superbugs? Like what?
Well, there's NDM1. That's an enzyme that makes bacteria resistant to a whole class of really powerful, often last resort antibiotics called carbapenems, which are related to penicillin.
So resistance to the big guns.
Exactly. And we also have things like colistin-resistant E. coli. Colistin is considered an antibiotic of absolute last resort for some multi-drug resistant infections. And now we're seeing resistance even to that.
That's terrifying.
It is. Even common anaerobic bacteria, like bacteroid species that live in our gut, are showing resistance rates over 90% to penicillin now. They've just completely adapted.
It's just so easy to fall into that trap, isn't it? Thinking, oh, I feel rough, I need an antibiotic.
Yeah.
I remember once I was absolutely convinced I had a nasty sinus infection, Went in expecting antibiotics, and doctor said, nope, looks viral, antibiotics won't help. It really highlighted for me how common those misconceptions are. So let's unpack that misuse part a bit more. What are some of the really common ways antibiotics get misused? And who's kind of responsible here? Is it patients, doctors, someone else?
You're absolutely right. Those misconceptions are a huge driver. Misuse includes a whole range of things, like you said, demanding or using antibiotics for viral infections, colds, flu, most sore throats, bronchitis, where they have absolutely zero effect. That's a big one.
Wasted drugs, basically.
Wasted drugs, and it contributes to resistance pressure. Other misuse includes people self-prescribing leftover antibiotics, maybe.
Oh, yeah, taking pills from a previous illness.
Exactly. Or taking the wrong dosage, or maybe stopping the course early as soon as they feel a bit better, not finishing the whole prescribed treatment.
Because they think they're cured.
Right. But that can leave behind tougher bacteria that then multiply. Sometimes physicians might also prescribe them inappropriately, maybe due to pressure from patients or just diagnostic uncertainty. It can be hard sometimes to tell bacterial from viral early on.
So it's complex. What about outside of human medicine?
Oh, absolutely. A huge factor is the extensive use of antibiotics in animal agriculture, in livestock farming.
For treating sick animals, or?
Sometimes for treatment, yes, but historically also used widely at low doses for growth promotion or routine disease prevention in crowded conditions.
Just adding it to feed.
Often, yes. And despite pledges and some regulations to reduce this, the actual purchase of antibiotics for farm animals in many places has actually been increasing.
Really?
In some regions, yes, it's a major concern. In 2012, a U.S. court even ordered the FDA to revoke approvals for certain non-therapeutic antibiotic uses in livestock because of the resistance risk.
So the responsibility, it seems pretty shared then. Patients, doctors, agriculture.
It really is. It's a systemic problem that requires action on multiple fronts.
Okay. And beyond just making bacteria stronger, just fostering more resistance, what are the other significant harms that come with overusing antibiotics?
Yeah, it's not just about resistance, though that's the biggest long-term threat. Overuse carries several direct risks to individuals, too. It can lead to more immediate adverse effects, sometimes severe ones like anaphylaxis, that's a life-threatening allergic reaction, or organ damage, particularly to the kidneys and liver with certain antibiotics.
Okay. And you mentioned C. diff earlier.
Right. There's the risk of superinfections. When antibiotics wipe out your good bacteria, it creates an opportunity for resistant organisms like C. diff, or maybe resistant to fungi like Candida, to take over and cause a new, often harder to treat infection.
So you trade one problem for another, potentially worse one.
Exactly. And just generally, antibiotics can really negatively alter your microbiome, the communities of microbes in your gut, lungs, skin, everywhere. We're only just beginning to understand the long-term health implications of disrupting that delicate ecosystem, but it's linked to things like allergies, autoimmune diseases, obesity. It's complex.
Wow. So even when they work for the initial infection, there can be these other collateral damages.
Precisely. While they are absolutely life-saving for serious bacterial infections, the harm from their overuse, especially when maybe the diagnosis isn't clear or the infection is mild and self-limiting, that harm is significant.
Okay, given this really serious escalating threat of resistance, what's actually being done? Is the pipeline for new antibiotics strong? Or are we, as it often feels, kind of running out of effective options?
Unfortunately, the latter is closer to the truth right now. We are very much running low on options, and the pipeline is worryingly weak.
Weak how? Not enough research.
Both the WHO and organizations like the Infectious Disease Society of America consistently report a weak antibiotic pipeline. It just isn't keeping pace with how quickly bacteria are evolving resistance. Think about it. The golden age of antibiotic discovery was mostly mid-20th century. The number of genuinely new classes of antibiotics being introduced has declined dramatically since then.
Why is that? Is it too hard to find new ones? Or not profitable enough for companies?
It's a bit of both. Finding completely new classes is scientifically very challenging. And economically, antibiotics aren't as profitable for pharmaceutical companies as drugs for chronic conditions that people take for years. An antibiotic cures an infection relatively quickly, so the market duration is short. That makes investment less attractive.
So we have a scientific challenge and an economic one.
Exactly. There are efforts trying to fix this, like the U.S. ADPT Act, the Antibiotic Development to Advance Patient Treatment Act. That aims to speed up approval for new antibiotics targeting these critical superbugs.
So there are efforts, but the pipeline is still lagging.
It is lagging significantly behind the need, unfortunately.
That's a sobering thought. But it makes me wonder, okay, what is being explored then? What's on the cutting edge? Are there new, maybe even non-traditional strategies being investigated to fight these resistant bacteria?
Yes. Thankfully, people are getting creative because we have to. Current strategies still include, the traditional chemistry-based approaches like screening large libraries of chemicals or looking for new natural products from bacteria, fungi, plants, even animals. Soil bacteria historically have been an incredibly rich source of antibiotics.
Still digging in the dirt for cures.
Literally, sometimes. But beyond that, there are newer approaches, things like immunoglobulin therapy.
Immunoglobulins?
Yeah.
Like antibodies?
Exactly. Using antibodies to specifically neutralize bacterial toxins, the things that make us sick, rather than killing the bacteria directly. It's a different angle.
Okay, disarming them instead of killing them.
Sort of. And then there's phage therapy, which is getting a lot of attention.
Right, phages. Tell us about those. That sounds really futuristic.
It does, doesn't it? Phages, or bacteriophages, are viruses that specifically infect and kill bacteria. They're like natural predators of bacteria. The idea is to use specific phages that target only the harmful bacteria causing an infection, leaving the patient's beneficial microbiota undisturbed.
Wow, like sending in tiny guided missiles just for the bad bugs.
That's a good analogy. It's very targeted. It's still largely experimental, but it holds a lot of promise.
What are the hurdles for phage therapy?
Well, there are regulatory hurdles. It's complex, approving a living virus as a drug. And there are safety concerns, too, making sure the phages don't accidentally carry harmful genes, potential virulence factors. More research is needed.
Okay, phage therapy. That concept just blew my mind when I first read about it. How close are we to seeing something like that move from experimental to, like, mainstream medicine? And what other novel biological approaches are? It's fascinating.
Yeah, phage therapy is definitely exciting. It is being used in some places, often on a compassionate use basis for infections with no other options, but broader mainstream adoption, it's still likely some way off, primarily due to those regulatory challenges and the need for larger clinical trials to really prove safety and efficacy consistently.
Okay, still developing. What else is out there?
Well, another remarkable approach is fecal microbiota transplants, or FMT.
Right, I've heard of this for C. diff.
Exactly. It's currently mainly an experimental treatment for recurrent C. difficile infection, the one that often occurs after antibiotic use. It involves transferring healthy gut microbes from a screen donor into the patient's gut to restore balance. And the results are pretty amazing. Cure rates around 90% in some studies for recurrent C. diff.
90%? That's incredible.
It really is. Shows the power of the microbiome. Then, getting even more high-tech, researchers are exploring things like antisense RNA-based treatments.
Antisense RNA, how does that work?
It uses small RNA molecules designed to essentially silence specific bacterial genes, maybe an essential gene the bacteria needs to survive, or even a specific resistance gene. Turn it off, make the bacteria vulnerable again.
Wow. And you mentioned CRISPR earlier, too.
Yes. Even CRISPR-Cas9 technology, famous for gene editing, is being adapted. It can be modified to act like molecular scissors, precisely targeting and destroying bacterial DNA, specifically targeting resistance genes or virulence genes that make bacteria harmful.
So literally cutting out the problem parts of the bacteria's DNA.
That's the idea. It's still very early days for CRISPR-based antibacterials, but the potential for precision is huge.
Okay. So lots of innovation happening, which is good news. But beyond developing these new drugs and therapies, which is clearly vital, how can we reduce the pressure, the evolutionary pressure for resistance to emerge in the first place? What can we do on a broader scale to just slow this whole process down?
That's absolutely crucial. Reducing the selection pressure is key, and a lot of it comes down to things we already know how to do, but need to do better and more consistently. Strategies include really well-established infection prevention and control measures. Things like basic infrastructure improvements, less crowded housing, better sanitation, access to safe drinking water, and clean food. These reduce infections overall.
So less infection means less need for antibiotics in the first place.
Exactly. And within healthcare settings, strong antibiotic stewardship programs are vital. These programs ensure antibiotics are prescribed appropriately, right drug, right dose, right duration, and only when truly necessary.
Making sure we use them wisely when we do need them.
Precisely. And critically, vaccines. Vaccines are an essential part of the response.
How do vaccines help with antibiotic resistance?
Well, vaccines prevent bacterial infections like pneumonia caused by Streptococcus pneumonia or meningitis caused by Haemophilus influenza type B. If you prevent the infection, you prevent the need for antibiotics to treat it. So vaccines directly reduce antibiotic use and therefore slow down the emergence and spread of resistant pathogens. It's a really powerful, often underappreciated tool in the AMR fight.
That makes perfect sense. Any other strategies? I think I read about antibiotic cycling.
Yeah, antibiotic cycling, the idea of rotating different classes of antibiotics in a hospital, for instance, to try and prevent resistance to any one class becoming dominant. Unfortunately, most studies have shown that strategy to be pretty ineffective against resistance in the long run. Bacteria are just too adaptable.
Ah, okay. So prevention, stewardship, and vaccines seem like the key pillars for reducing pressure.
Those are definitely the core strategies alongside developing new treatments, yes.
Wow. What an incredible deep dive this has been. From, ancient Sudi's brew showing our ancestors were maybe surprisingly clued in to natural medicine, all the way to cutting-edge CRISPR technology that really does feel like science fiction. We've seen how antibiotics completely transform medicine, looked at some of those unexpected side effects, and really faced this looming crisis of resistance driven by misuse and overuse.
Yes, absolutely. Antibiotics are such a testament to scientific ingenuity, aren't they? But they're also this stark reminder of the constant evolutionary arms race we're in with the microbial world, understanding their history, how they work, and how resistance develops. It's just essential, I think, for appreciating the critical challenge we face in preserving their effectiveness for future generations.
So what does all this mean for you listening right now? Well, it means being informed is actually a powerful tool in itself. The next time you encounter a discussion about antibiotics, or maybe even just consider taking them yourself, you'll know it's not just about a simple pill. It's about this complex ecosystem of history, biology, global public health. It's all interconnected.
And maybe this leaves us with a vital question to ponder. In a world where antibiotic resistance is, as the WHO says, a serious threat that is happening right now in every region of the world, how will your choices, your understanding, contribute to this ongoing fight to keep these truly life-saving medicines effective for everyone?